Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Deeply concerned, and I'm very sorry to Ms. Yeung for what occurred.
Mounties apologize and call for more medical support during wellness checks. Also,
yeah, it's better than not seeing each other at all. I mean, Skype only takes you so far.
Border loophole. Cross-border families find a new way to meet at Peace Arch Park. And
flooding closes Highway 1 in Revelstoke, and more rain is on the way.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening. More than 5 months after Kelowna RCMP were called to check on Mona Yeung and shocking video of her encounter with police was broadcast, police are now promising accountability.
Yeung, who is a nursing student, was seen being dragged and stepped on by an officer inside her apartment building. As Mira Baines reports, now the district's top Mountie is promising change. And a warning, some of the images in this story may be disturbing to some.
When I first saw the video, deeply concerned, and I'm very sorry to Ms. Yeung for what occurred.
The Okanagan's top Mountie, Brad Hoagley, announced an external investigation into the incident caught on camera. He says Abbotsford police will investigate a Kelowna RCMP officer's conduct during a wellness check. That probe could lead to criminal charges against the officer. The January 20th incident was caught on apartment surveillance video, released by Mona Yeung as part of her civil lawsuit against Corporal Lacey Browning. The images show Corporal Browning dragging the 20-year-old student down a hallway and later stepping on her as she lay on the ground. Corporal Browning denies causing her harm and says only necessary force was used. Yeung says she accepts Hoagley's apology, but has concerns about police investigating police.
To me, I think that apology was quite sincere, and I do accept it, and, I appreciate it. But, like an apology is just that, right? I want to see more change being done, some kind of reform in terms of, policy or just how they handle these kind of complaints and wellness checks.
Hoagley says the current policy for wellness checks needs to change. Currently, a nurse is available to accompany officers during limited hours during the week.
Personally, my vision would be that there would be a nurse accompanying every police officer to every mental health call. What that number looks like, I can't tell you the specifics.
But it's specifics, including where the money will come from to fund more nurses, that needs to be resolved before there can be change. Hoagley has requested a meeting with Interior Health.
Perhaps an alternative model might be a better use of our scarce mental health resources.
Corporal Browning has been placed on desk duty. RCMP say a report is expected to be completed by mid-July.
I wouldn't be surprised if nothing comes out of it, which is really upsetting and sad to say, but there's been so many cases like this where nothing was done, and that definitely needs to change. Whether that begins with me or someone else, because I'm definitely not the first and I won't be the last.
The Abbotsford police report will be forwarded to Crown Counsel, who will determine if charges will be laid. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
And to the latest on COVID-19 in BC, today's update from the province includes numbers from the past 2 days. There were 24 new cases in that span of time, and sadly, 3 more people have died. There are 160 active cases. That's 8 more than the last update given on Tuesday. 17 people are in hospital, but only 2 of them are in intensive and critical care, a new low. Over 2,600 people have recovered from COVID-19 in BC. That's an 89% recovery rate.
With the U.S.-Canada border still closed to non-essential travel, some frustration is surfacing over American license plates spotted in our province. But new numbers from the Canada Border Services Agency show a huge drop in nationwide crossings. Compared to last year, land crossings were down 86% from June 15th to 21st. At airports, the numbers have dropped 96%. Even trucks, which have been declared an essential service, are crossing 11% less than last year. However, our Premier has taken notice of Americans moving in and through BC.
We're concerned about this phenomenon, and we're hearing about it in communities right across the province. I've raised it with the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, and I'm hopeful that she'll take this up with State Department authorities. We want to ensure that that Alaskans can get home safely, but we also want to protect the work that all British Columbians have done to flatten the curve.
Americans are allowed to pass through BC when traveling between Alaska and the rest of the United States, but they must go directly. A legal loophole is allowing Canadians to head to Peace Arch Park, despite the fact it was closed by our province to prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
While the provincial government shut down the BC side, Washington State did not do the same on the American side.
As Deborah Goebel reports, that means Canadians and Americans can both mingle together as long as they don't leave the 20-acre green space.
In a perfect world, Kaylin Ball and David Hogston would be making wedding plans right now. She lives in South Surrey, he lives in Baltimore. Still, things were going smoothly. Then COVID-19 hit.
Test your relationship. Really makes you think, like, what will I do for you? And yeah, I'll travel across the country and sit in a park for 3 or 4 days just to be with you.
The plan was he'd fly to Seattle, drive up to the border, get a hotel, and they'd spend Canada Day through the 4th of July together at Peace Arch Park.
Park opens at 8 a.m., so we're here at like 8:30 because I was a little late. But then we stay till basically 9 when it closes, so we're here down till dusk.
Then a few weeks ago, the BC government announced that wasn't going to work either.
And then they said they closed the park.
Oh yeah, that was a sad day.
That was a very sad day.
Yes.
And since neither of them was in a position to quarantine for 14 days, even flying was off the table. But then they finally found a way.
It's a bit of a secret right now.
You might also call it a 20-acre COVID loophole.
What Canadians have been doing to kind of bypass that closure is they've been accessing the American park from Zero Avenue for 2 or 3 blocks. And the U.S. border officials have no problems with Canadians accessing the U.S. park from the Canadian side.
The BC government shut down the Canadian side of the park to keep COVID cases down. And the U.S.-Canada border is still closed to most traffic. But there's not much BC can do if Canadians choose to meet up with American friends or loved ones here.
The American government seems to have no concern with Canadians coming into the U.S.
They don't allow camping overnight in the park, but David and Kaylin have put up a small see-through tent for day visiting.
Feels like Field of Dreams, how you're just, have to be in that one park and then you can't step out, otherwise you disappear. So I'll just keep in, but that's our moment, that's our little piece of heaven.
He can't go past the ditch on the Canadian side, and she can't step into the parking lot on the American side. But at least they're together.
I mean, there are worse places to be.
Yeah, we've been saying that.
Stuck in a park.
Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Peace Arch Park, USA.
And some BC First Nations have suffered another defeat in their long-running fight against the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project. Canada's top court has dismissed an application to appeal Ottawa's second approval of the project. The Supreme Court of Canada dismissed the application from the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh and Coldwater Nations. It did not release reasons for its decision, which is customary. The First Nations applicants had challenged the adequacy of Indigenous consultation in the lead-up to the project's second approval.
This case is more than a risky pipeline and a tanker project. It is a major setback for reconciliation. It reduces consultation to a purely procedural requirement.
Leaders with the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh Nations say they are exploring other legal options to block the project.
A West Vancouver man has been charged after he was seen on video feeding bears. The BC Conservation Officers Service says the 2018 video shows people feeding bears from their home. The man has been charged with 1 count of feeding dangerous wildlife and 1 count of attracting dangerous wildlife. Conservation officers say the feeding dangerous wildlife puts the safety of animals and people at risk. It can condition the animals to think residential areas are places to go for food.
Many BC residents will be receiving some extra cash this month as the Enhanced Climate Action Tax Credit gets sent out. First announced in March as part of BC's COVID-19 action plan, July's installment of the credit will have a one-time boost. A family of 4 who qualifies for the maximum credit based on income would get $565. The credit for this quarter is 5 times higher than usual. The province estimates 80% of households will receive some money. Credits will be sent out with the federal GST and HST returns.
A new acute care tower planned for Richmond Hospital is going to be larger than expected. Premier John Horgan says the plans for the 9-story tower have become much more ambitious. The project includes a new emergency department, intensive care unit, and a medical imaging unit. As well, 110 beds are going to be added, increasing the total to 350. Renovations will also be made to the hospital's south tower. Horgan says construction could be wrapped up by 2024.
A Saskatchewan teenager whose life-altering spinal surgery in Vancouver was put on hold during the pandemic is finally standing a little straighter. The parents of 13-year-old Bronwyn Joanna says her long-awaited scoliosis surgery was a success. The procedure was canceled in March when operating rooms were closed due to COVID-19. Doctors told her she had a narrow window to treat the malformation when her back was at a specific angle. Bronwyn is now recovering and has plans to fly home next week and ride her new bike.
The BC government is warning people across our province to be careful tonight as flood warnings and flood watches are hitting several regions. Dawson Creek is already dealing with flooding after heavy rain last night. Several evacuation alerts are in effect for the area, as are a number of road closures. Homes are dealing with sewer backups, and there is more rain to come, so waters may not drop for some time. And ladies and gentlemen, look who is back in studio. Meteorologist Brett Soderholm. Good to see you in person, buddy.
Likewise.
Nice to see you. Yes, Brett. So now that we're very glad that you're with us, we have some serious weather warnings to get to in BC. What are we looking at?
Well, we were just showing what it was looking like in Dawson Creek, and I wanted to start there by showing you that the rain is definitely not over. In fact, we are dealing with some severe thunderstorms in the area right now. It's kind of wrapping around from Alberta, heading into the northeastern Peace region, and anything here that it looks like purple, that means that there is even some small hail expected and lots of lightning. Now, in fact, Environment Canada has issued a severe thunderstorm warning for this region, and if that's not enough, there is also a rainfall warning. So needless to say, a lot of rain is coming, and as a result, as you could likely imagine, flood watches and warnings are absolutely blanketing much of eastern BC, including for Dawson Creek. Now, flood warnings are the highest concern right now, and that's sort of in the upper Fraser River toward Prince George and Quesnel, but there are other places that are seeing some flooding as well. I want to show you, this is in actually Revelstoke, or just west of Revelstoke, along Highway 1, that is the Trans-Canada Highway, about 10 to 15 kilometers west of the town, and that water that you're seeing there is coating the road in itself, and of course traffic was blocked in both directions earlier today, and BC's ministers are of course encouraging people to stay away from any of these fast-flowing rivers, or in this case, roads. Now, as we move ahead, we are seeing one positive to this whole thing. You can imagine the fire danger rating across BC is understandably quite low because of all of the rain, all of the cool conditions. So it's a very interesting contrast to see from one side of the province to the other. Now, when I come back in my next hit, I'll be able to give you a full, complete provincial forecast because there is going to be a little bit of sunshine on the way.
Sounds good. Good to have you back in studio. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
And just a reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. The free app is also where you can find other CBC programs.
And CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
An armed man makes his way to Rideau Hall, home of the Governor General and the Prime Minister. He's been arrested, but neighbors are very shaken. That story is next. Thanks for watching our ad-free live stream during the regular TV commercial break tonight.
Health authorities in southwestern Ontario have issued another order that will effectively shut down a farm. The owner of the farm has been ordered to isolate employees and cease all work until further notice.
Officials aren't identifying the farm, but CBC News has confirmed it is Nature Fresh in Leamington. Nearly 200 workers there tested positive for COVID-19 over the weekend.
Elsewhere in Ontario, a tragic story, but one with a good ending. An overnight blaze has left a family without their home.
They narrowly escaped the devastating fire themselves this morning, but as the CBC's Linda Ward explains, the family is now safe thanks to a neighbor's dog.
Flames ripped through this old home in the heart of historic Thornhill Village early this morning. A neighbor caught these images on camera at the height of the blaze.
The fire was coming out of the walls, and we were really afraid that it was going to hit the building beside the house here.
As the flames inched closer to neighboring homes, it was this furry, fire-sniffing pooch who sounded the alarm.
Shortly after 2 o'clock this morning, I heard our dog Georgia getting up and going out onto the landing, which was unusual for her. I thought, oh, something's up. She stopped halfway down the stairs and sort of looked out the window, and I followed her gaze and went, oh my God, there's a fire.
He called 911. York Regional Police arrived and found the house completely engulfed in flames.
When officers got here, they learned that the family was still inside of the home. Officers rushed inside of the burning building and located 4 people and a family dog inside the house still.
Wearing only their police uniforms, they rescued a father and daughter who couldn't get out on their own.
2 people were in wheelchairs, so officers actually picked them up and carried them out of the home.
Neighbors say this family has had their share of challenges. The father having suffered a stroke, and one of 2 teenage daughters also uses a wheelchair. They got out with mere moments to spare.
If Georgia hadn't woken me up, yes, we probably would have lost a minute or 2.
The damage is obviously very significant, so it is amazing that no one was harmed seriously.
All 4, as well as a police officer, were taken to hospital for smoke inhalation. 3 other officers were treated at the scene. The fire marshal is now trying to figure out how it started.
I know that there's been reports that the fire started on the exterior of the building and then spread inward, and that's one of the things that we'll have to look at.
One of the possibilities the fire marshal's looking at is a cigarette put out in a garden planter like this one, filled with peat moss. The home is likely a total loss. This family got away with their lives, but not much else. And police are hopeful that now this community will rally around this family to help get them through this next challenge. Linda Ward, CBC News, Thornhill.
Thankfully, nobody injured there. And good job to that pup, Georgia.
Dog.
Yes, no kidding. All right, stay with us. We'll be back with more news and headlines from Ontario in just a few moments.
When your backyard is burning, is anywhere safe? I'm Adrienne Lamb, the host of a new podcast, World on Fire. Join us on the front lines of wildfires burning around the world. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Police in Ottawa have arrested an active member of the Canadian Armed Forces. The man managed to gain access to the Governor General's residence early this morning. He had a gun, but no one was hurt. Still, as Hilary Johnstone learned, it left nearby residents very nervous.
RCMP say they were called to the area around 6:40 this morning. An armed man managed to access the grounds at Rideau Hall. He was arrested without incident. A source told CBC News the man drove here from Manitoba. He had a long gun and a note with him, and he's an active member of the Canadian Armed Forces. It's not known what was written in that note or what type of long gun was found.
Around 9:40 this morning, we watched as a small autonomous vehicle, which looked a bit like a robot on wheels, approached a dark pickup truck, which was about 75 meters into the grounds away from this gate.
The robot removed items from the vehicle, including a cooler and boxes. Then officers and sniffer dogs moved in. There was visible damage to one of the wrought iron gates leading to the property and a heavy police presence, which caught area residents off guard.
Seeing an awful lot of police Mounties heading at high speed towards downtown.
I just saw a stream of RCMP vehicles coming down the parkway. First it was cars and then the armored vehicle and what looked like special equipment trucks.
How were you feeling as you were seeing all this?
I'm a little anxious, actually.
Rideau Hall is the official residence of the Governor General, and the Prime Minister has been living at Rideau Cottage. Both of their offices say neither one of them were on the grounds at the time of the incident. Rideau Hall is normally a major tourist attraction, but it's been closed because of the ongoing pandemic. Hilary Johnstone, CBC News, Ottawa.
A tragic accident in a small Quebec hamlet has rocked the quiet community, leaving 3 young children dead and a driver facing criminal charges. Sarah Levitt has more.
Last night, a family gathering turned tragic. A man loaded the front bucket of his tractor with wood, and then 6 children and 4 adults got inside. Not far from their home, these markings on the road show where something went terribly wrong. Provincial police say the group on the bucket fell and the tractor ran over them. Now 3 children, all under the age of 5, are dead and 3 others are seriously injured. The driver has been charged with criminal negligence causing death and criminal negligence causing bodily harm. Riel Poirier says it's sad that this is why people are hearing about Notre-Dame-de-Stan Bridge. The hamlet is home to fewer than 1,000 people, many of them farmers. Sitting outside his house about 1 kilometer from the incident, he saw the ambulances and police cars rush by.
I could hear the sirens going down the road from my place.
Luc Perrault was also there.
I just saw the ambulances. You know, it's nothing that you want to get close to. If it happens in front of you, you know, you actually go because, you know, we're humans and we help each other. But, you know, you couldn't go. There's nothing anybody wanted to see that, you know.
Daniel Tétrault, the mayor of Notre-Dame-de-Stan Bridge, says he's making sure psychological help is available for those in the community. It's the first time something like this has happened here, he says, and it's not easy. The driver was released on bail. There's a publication ban on his identity as well as that of the victims. Among his conditions, he can't drive a car, but he can drive a tractor, as long as there's nobody else in it with him. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Notre-Dame-de-Stan Bridge.
People in an Ontario neighborhood are calling for action after another terrifying crash caught on camera. This time, a car barreled down their street in the middle of the afternoon. They're now asking for the mayor to get involved. As they told the CBC's Greg Ross, the area is no stranger to crashes like this.
The shocking moment, a car skidded off of Williams Parkway in Brampton, crashed through a fence and onto Commodore Drive. This man was on his porch and witnessed the whole thing.
And I saw this shoo, literally it was flying. It was flying and just...
In fact, it flew right into his car, which was parked on the street.
It's gone. It's total lost, finish.
Commodore Drive is a residential street where a number of young children live.
Right here. My daughters are always rollerblading and biking here.
Fortunately, this woman's daughters were inside at the time and no other residents were hurt. Even the driver of the car walked away with minor injuries, but residents say he didn't seem concerned about his own health.
No, he was concerned about his car being wrecked.
This is not the first time this has happened on this street. On May 16th, less than 2 months ago, another car crashed through this same fence at night. It hit 2 other parked cars, one belonging to Syed Anwar and the other his wife.
Yeah, they were right here. He smashed the 2 cars, went through them, and he ended up there, through that fence.
In both cases, speed appears to be a big factor, with the cars taking this curve on Williams Parkway too fast.
It's not safe. They're always racing on the street. At nighttime, you can hear the cars racing around. It's really not safe.
Street racing is a problem police say they've been having right across Peel Region. Last year, between April 1st and June 1st, police say they received 270 calls to report street racing. In that same time period this year, police say those calls have more than doubled, and they believe that the COVID-19 pandemic is the reason.
Yeah, my humble opinion, the open roadways have made it easier for individuals that partake in street racing activities and organizers of these events to take advantage of the open roadways during COVID.
Some residents in this neighborhood are calling for the city to put photo radar on Williams Parkway. But Mayor Patrick Brown says they are only permitted to do that in designated safety zones with schools and community centers. But he says he is prepared to increase police presence in the area.
Like given the video and the 2 incidents on Williams Parkway, that we're going to need a similar blitz on Williams Parkway to ensure that there is significant consequences and significant penalties for reckless behavior, reckless driving.
The 28-year-old driver of that car that crashed through this fence has been charged with dangerous driving, and police say those charges could have been far more severe had he injured somebody or, God forbid, killed somebody. And police say they're also investigating whether or not racing was involved in this crash, and they say if it was, they'll be looking to charge anyone else who was involved. Greg Ross, CBC News, Brampton.
COVID-19 is on the rise in 37 American states amid record high infection rates. The latest from south of the border next.
The CBC News with George McLean.
Good evening. The family and close friends of Terry Fox filled a tiny chapel in his hometown of Port Coquitlam, British Columbia today. They were there to pay their final respects to the young cancer victim who ran his way into the hearts of a nation with his marathon of hope. Sheldon Turcott has this report.
Only relatives, close friends, and a few officials attended the private service in Trinity United Church. Atop the casket, flowers and Terry's Medal of the Order of Canada. Nearby, a wreath from the Government of Canada. The ecumenical service was presided over by United Church Minister Bob Wallace.
Almighty and eternal God, we remember before you today our brother in Christ, Terence Stanley Fox. We thank you for giving him to us to know and to love as a companion in our pilgrimage of living.
The eulogy was delivered by Terry's high school basketball coach, teacher, and friend, Bob McGill.
He was a young man who believed in hard work and self-sacrifice, a young man who believed in dreams, and yes, even miracles. He was a young man who felt that you could achieve anything if you really believed in it, and if you were willing to dream it, you could become it. All of you who really care, he just wanted you to stop for a minute and think of how best maybe you could help in the fight against cancer. Well, Terry, you succeeded. Oh, how you succeeded.
At the conclusion of the service, an RCMP guard folded a Canadian flag, which had flown atop the Peace Tower until yesterday. In a singular honor of a private citizen, the Prime Minister had ordered the flag sent out to Port Coquitlam to be presented to Terry's mother, Betty Fox. The pallbearers were 6 close friends of Terry, some from his junior high school days. The Guard of Honor, 12 members of the Vancouver Cable Cars, the famed basketball team of the disabled, who Terry knew so well. It was a private service at the Hilltop Cemetery. Overhead, there was a flypast by 3 jets of the Canadian Armed Forces. The ceremony itself was brief and simple. The only people attending were the 54 members of the Fox family, the pallbearers, and the Guard of Honor. Although stricken with grief, the family was bolstered by the prayers of millions of Canadians. It was decided by Betty and Rolly Fox that their son should be buried wearing something the whole nation will never forget, the Terry Fox Marathon of Hope T-shirt. Sheldon Turcott, CBC News, Port Coquitlam, BC.
Here's some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Personally, my vision would be that there would be a nurse accompanying every police officer to every mental health call.
Kelowna's top Mountie is asking Interior Health for more mental health teams to work with Mounties. He apologized to nursing student Mona Wang today, who was seen on video dragged and stepped on by another RCMP officer during a wellness check. Both a criminal and code of conduct review against Corporal Lacey Browning are underway. She's on desk duty. Wang is suing Browning for the trauma she claims she endured. Browning denies causing her harm and says only necessary force was used.
I'm pretty lucky to have a guy who's gonna fly all the way out here, drive all the way up here just to sit in the rain in a park with me.
Nah, I'd do anything for you.
Cross-border lovebirds are finding new ways to meet at Peace Arch Park. Border officials closed the Canadian side of the park 2 weeks ago after concerns over too many meetups. But now families have found a loophole on the American side of the border that allows them to continue to reunite.
And flooding has closed a major highway in eastern BC. Highway 1 near Revelstoke shut down after getting hit by floodwater. More rain is in the forecast. Now BC's public safety minister is urging people to be very careful around rivers, streams, and waterways.
It took a little over 2 months for the U.S. to record its first 50,000 coronavirus cases. Yesterday, it recorded 50,000 new cases in a single day. 50,700, in fact, the biggest single-day increase in that country since the pandemic began. The infection rate is climbing in 40 states, and as Paul Hunter tells us, the 4th of July weekend could create a perfect storm.
In the COVID intensive care unit at this hospital in Texas, urgency mixes with dread.
We are having an explosion of COVID. We aren't overrun yet, but it's overwhelming.
Texas is one of the states that had eased up on steps to combat the virus, but as its own governor today underlined,
in the past few weeks, there has been a swift and a substantial spike in COVID-19 cases. So we need to refocus on slowing the spread.
Showing Texans the data to back that up, he's now ordering almost everyone in that state to wear a mask at all times when in public spaces. This as Florida today saw a record number of new COVID infections, 10,000.
The crisis is being handled.
Donald Trump today suggested it's all in good hands.
Some areas that were very hard hit are now doing very well. Some were doing very well, and we thought they may be gone, and they flare up, and we're putting out the fires.
That's just not an honest assessment of what's happening.
Rival Joe Biden is having none of it, slamming the president again for failing to properly take on the pandemic.
Lead. Get out of the way so others can, Mr. President.
Critics have in part pointed to Trump's effective refusal so far to wear a mask in public. They say signaling to millions it's not needed. But now a hint his view may be evolving, telling Fox News last night when he put one on, he liked what he saw.
And I thought it looked okay. It looked like the Lone Ranger.
Meanwhile, the country braces for big crowds and the 4th of July with the fear that in celebrating, Americans will now supercharge the spread. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Some BC growers struggled to fill out their staff during the pandemic. More than 1,000 migrant farm workers in southwestern Ontario have been diagnosed with COVID-19, and 3 have died.
Last week, the province introduced measures to protect foreign laborers, but as CBC's Jonathan Gatehouse explains, undocumented employees are falling through the cracks.
It's an open secret around town. Advocates estimate that there are at least 2,000 undocumented workers in the area. Farm laborers who aren't here on official government permits, hired instead via temp agencies and fly-by-night recruiters who shuffle them from farm to farm, taking a big cut of their pay. Rogelio Munoz Santos, a 24-year-old from Mexico, died after testing positive for COVID-19. He came to Canada on a tourist visa. This man worked with Rogelio in a greenhouse. We're calling him Juan to protect his identity because he too is undocumented. Their jobs were arranged by a Canadian recruiter. Their wages paid in cash. Their safety overlooked. We started to get sick, he says, all of us. We knew that we had the coronavirus. Some of their final days together were spent living in this motel in Leamington. They abandoned me. They never gave me anything, he says. Same with Rogelio. They also abandoned him. This undocumented man is from Guatemala. He came here on a temporary foreign worker permit, but when it expired, he stayed. We're protecting his identity because he's afraid he'll be deported. In the past month, he says he's worked at 4 or 5 different farms. Are you frightened that you might get sick? No, at the moment I'm not scared, thank God, because to me it doesn't exist so far, he says. Around 1,000 workers have tested positive so far on farms, but this number tells us little about the health of undocumented workers, a group officials know about but can't seem to reach.
It is a different level of barriers for those who are not currently documented as workers here, and so their assumption is that this type of testing is not available to them.
Testing is available for everyone, But undocumented workers fear that coming forward could mean being deported. And with families back home depending on their wages, for many it's not a risk they're willing to take. Jonathan Gatehouse, CBC News, Leamington.
The Toronto Blue Jays will begin their training camp in Toronto.
As Devin Haru reports, the news comes after a coronavirus outbreak at the team's South Florida training facilities.
This year it took until summer for the boys of summer to fly back to town, but they're now cleared for takeoff by the federal government, allowed to bypass the mandatory 14-day quarantine. They'll be at the Rogers Center this weekend.
I mean, I'm excited. I live right beside it, so hopefully the dome's open. I can see in a little bit.
If the government is making the citizens suffering, why not them?
They should be made to quarantine.
Eventually, quarantine does get to you and you have to get out of your house.
I think it is going to be a positive for the city, for the Blue Jays, of course, but I think also for the people of the city.
The hotel attached to the facility will be the players' home for weeks. Strict measures include never stepping foot outside the venue.
It basically looks like a big home with a big backyard, and as long as the players don't leave the home or the backyard, there should be little to no threat to the general public.
He says the plans look good on paper, but it all depends on players actually staying in that bubble.
It's going to be pretty obvious if a professional baseball player is hanging out having a beer at a bar down the street. Like, the optics of that would be terrible.
There's a high fly ball. They have 3 weeks to prepare for opening day, but they don't even know if this is where they'll play their regular season home games.
And he got him.
Something the government has yet to approve. Team president Mark Shapiro acknowledges the Jays and every visiting team would have to adhere to strict quarantine measures.
We will look to end up with a similar result where we protect the public in every way possible, but we have to deal with not just our team coming in and out of the country, but the visiting team as well.
A challenge for sure for Major League Baseball's only non-American team, playing in what many call the Dome, soon really acting as one. Devin Haru, CBC News, Toronto.
A Canadian dancer was poised to make his New York stage debut. Then COVID-19 interrupted his plans.
As Jason Warwick reports, now he's putting his skills to use in an entirely different field.
Saskatoon's Max Craven was all set to make his professional dancing debut this spring, but then the show was canceled when the coronavirus hit New York City.
So we're just going to start initiating the low abs.
Craven was forced to come home to Saskatoon, but he didn't sit around for long. He was hired to teach online courses to the junior athletes of Canada's artistic swim team.
Extend the leg to ballet leg.
Craven said it was the perfect match. He had nowhere to perform, and all of their swimming pools were closed.
I feel really good about it. I mean, obviously, it's not how I planned my summer to go, but it's a very good alternative. Like, I'm really enjoying teaching other people about ballet and helping other people understand technique, and being able to do that and influence another community as a whole, being the artistic swim community, is like a huge privilege.
Craven has been teaching several classes a week. Sometimes he emphasizes technique, other courses focus on balance or timing. Craven says he loves it.
You know, I've made lemonade out of lemons per se because, you know, everyone in the world was dealt a bad hand when this pandemic started, and it's things like this that make it a little bit easier, softens the blow.
The head of Canada's junior artistic swim team says they wanted to try something different, and they say Craven is making a huge difference.
He's a great teacher. You know, he speaks well, he highlights what it is they need to focus on, and then he can demonstrate it perfectly.
Like you're doing an egg beater boost, you're coming out of the water.
Craven says it could be a while before he can return to New York. So for now, he says it's nice to have something meaningful to do.
That's 3 points of contact we need to make.
Jason Warwick, CBC News, Saskatoon.
A major development in the saga of sex criminal Jeffrey Epstein. The high-profile socialite who is accused of helping him recruit young girls has been arrested. That's coming up.
And at 6:38 p.m., you're looking at a live shot of Revelstoke there. Very peaceful right now. You'd be forgiven for taking a second look at the calendar. It is July 2nd, but it has been downright chilly. We'll find out why from Brett next. And meteorologist Brett Soderholm is back again. So, Brett, there is lots to talk about in Weatherland today. Yeah. First of all, why is it still so cold? Like, I'm just going to say it's cold because on Facebook, all my friends are all saying, I just turned on the heat. It's July 2nd.
Oh, I know, exactly. And yesterday, for the record, Canada Day, we didn't get up past 15 degrees. We stayed below 15 all day long. And if it's even, I don't know, not any consolation, but it's actually warmer right now in Whitehorse and Yellowknife.
That's not a consolation.
Vancouver. It's just a little bit strange. We'll get to the explanation in just a little bit, but just to show you temperatures across all of the lower mainland into the Fraser Valley, we are about 5 to maybe even 6 degrees below seasonal right now. And you can thank kind of just this cloud cover, this rain, this drizzle. It's been preventing that sun from shining and warming us up as we normally would like it to. And guess what? These showers that you're just seeing to start up, popping right around by Point Roberts and going up toward Delta, this is going to be the trend as we go throughout the evening. And sadly, much of tomorrow. I know there are some people that do like the rain, so perhaps it's not necessarily a sad story, but watch for that increasing chance of showers throughout the overnight period and then through much of tomorrow. And daytime highs here in Vancouver, we'll be lucky if we get to 17 degrees, and that is still about 4 degrees below normal. So where this is all coming from? Well, really, it goes back to the reason why we're so concerned about flooding in the north. This area of low pressure, in addition to bringing rain from Alberta, it's also bringing down colder Arctic air. And that means that places in Vancouver on the south coast, we're dealing with temperatures that are, of course, about 5 degrees below normal, as I keep saying, but those showers are going to be continuing across that region, really, for the overnight tonight and then into much of tomorrow. But there is going to be a little bit of a relief as we get into the weekend, something I don't normally get the chance to say on this program, it seems, but both Saturday and Sunday are looking to be much drier. Now, temperature-wise, as we look farther to the north, you're going to still see temperatures in places like Fort Nelson on the cool side for tomorrow, and that's good because we don't need any additional snowmelt happening in those regions. But farther to the south, we are looking at those temperatures kind of following a similar trend. And the one thing I really do want to stress here is that as we move ahead into the next couple of days, water levels across the entire province in rivers are going to be rising quite rapidly. So it is imperative that you stay away from rivers and those banks as much as you can. And in terms of a 5-day forecast, there is a little bit of a silver lining here. Once we get rid of these showers on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and beyond, we're looking at a lot of sunshine and a return to temperatures into the low 20s. So just hang on, Lien. You're going to be able to get back and feeling like summer before you know it.
I'm hanging on, Brett, hanging on. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The FBI has made an arrest in the ongoing investigation into the sex crimes of Jeffrey Epstein.
This morning, 53-year-old British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in New Hampshire.
As Stephen D'Souza explains, she's been charged with helping to recruit girls to be sexually abused by Epstein.
Good afternoon.
For all the years convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein preyed on young girls, Ghislaine Maxwell was at his side. Many of the victims accused the British heiress of taking part. And today, prosecutors charged Maxwell with playing a critical role in luring women for Epstein.
Maxwell enticed minor girls, got them to trust her, then delivered them into the trap that she and Epstein had set for them.
Prosecutors say Maxwell would befriend the girls, one as young as 14, take them to movies or shopping, and was often present and took part in the abuse.
She befriended the innocent, attempted to normalize sexual abuse, and worked to put victims at ease, aware the entire time of the abuse that would follow.
Prosecutors say Maxwell went into hiding last year after Epstein committed suicide in custody. She was tracked down to a sprawling property in New Hampshire. Maxwell is also charged with lying under oath, denying she knew Epstein was with underage girls when questioned during a deposition for a civil lawsuit in 2016.
Maxwell lied because the truth, as alleged, was almost unspeakable.
Epstein and Maxwell traveled in well-connected circles, and a number of high-profile names have been linked to the disgraced financier. Among them, former President Bill Clinton, lawyer Alan Dershowitz, and Prince Andrew. Prosecutors wouldn't comment on who else may be linked to their investigation, but did repeat an invitation to Prince Andrew to come in for questioning.
We would welcome Prince Andrew coming in to talk with us. We would like to have the benefit of his statement.
One of Epstein's victims released a statement today saying she can breathe a sigh of relief and that Maxwell's arrest means some justice for survivors. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
China is sending a warning after several countries, including Canada, criticized its new security law in Hong Kong.
The country is condemning what it calls foreign meddling as the UK offers millions of Hong Kongers refuge. Freelance reporter Patrick Falk is in Beijing with more.
Well, the Chinese embassy in London has said that it firmly opposes the move and has accused Britain of breaking its pledge on not taking B&O passports to come and live and work in the UK. I spoke to one political scientist who says that he's not aware of any such commitment that Britain has made, but a lot has been made about this figure of 3 million people that Britain is opening its doors to. But of course, there are only around 300,000 Hong Kongers that hold B&O passports. Among them, a lot of them are going to want to remain in Hong Kong and take their chances. Some of them will want to remain in the region, and a lot of them will want to go to other countries besides the UK. And of course, there is that segment of the population in Hong Kong that actually supports Beijing's moves. But if you were to ask why this is important to China, well, this is very much about face, and Beijing will see this as an unfriendly move that's being taken by Britain. And as far as Beijing is concerned, it hasn't breached the Sino-British joint declaration, as Boris Johnson has accused it of. To an extent also, this matters domestically because China has been pushing this propaganda about the national security legislation, saying that it will restore calm in Hong Kong and that this is what the majority of people there want. So if there were this mass exodus of people to leave and go to the UK or wherever it may be, it may not reflect very well on the government. As Dominic Raab has said, China may be concerned about the reputational damage. So when it talks about corresponding measures, it is to an extent about deterring other countries from taking any action as well.
A landslide has killed more than 160 people in northern Myanmar. A wave of water and mud buried most of the victims after a huge mound of mine tailings collapsed into a small lake in Kachin State. The area is known for its large and productive jade mines. Most of the dead are believed to be freelance miners known as jade pickers. They go through the mine tailings looking for pieces of the stone that are missed by the larger operations. Russian voters have overwhelmingly backed constitutional reforms that could keep President Vladimir Putin in power until 2036.
Critics call the vote a sham. Freelancer Lucy Taylor has the story from Moscow.
Well, this result will give Vladimir Putin a chance to rule into his 80s, but the campaign has focused on almost anything else. This amendment to allow him to stand for 2 more terms in office after this current term is one of hundreds of amendments bundled into a single package, which voters had to answer with one yes or no question. And the other amendments in that package take in a huge variety of topics. They outlaw gay marriage, for example. They guarantee a minimum wage and boost pensions. The effect of this is that he will now be able to stand for 2 more terms in office, zeroing his presidential term count so far, and it also gives him criminal immunity for life. We're told that nearly 3/4 of voters have approved these changes with a turnout of 65%, but this has been an unusual vote with very unusual rules. Other people campaigning against these amendments have complained about the way that the vote has been executed. Election monitors also have tried to scrutinise the vote, but they say they've witnessed multiple irregularities.
That was reporter Lucy Taylor in Moscow. A ban on single-use plastics came into effect for 11 million people in the Indonesian capital of Jakarta yesterday, but today the bags were still evident. Shoppers and market vendors say more time is needed to comply, and some complain that for items like fish or chicken, there is no alternative. The penalty for breach of the ban ranges from written warnings to fines of nearly $2,000. Parts of Canada imposed a similar ban on plastic earlier this year, but plastic has made a comeback during the pandemic. Indonesia actually imports plastic waste for recycling. It's also said to be the world's second worst offender in dumping plastic waste into the sea.
Remember that chap who traded a paperclip and managed to upgrade his trade to a house? This PEI man did the same thing with a fishing hook. What did he land? We'll show you next.
I'm CBC journalist Will Fundal, and I'm non-binary. But what exactly does that mean? We'll answer some of the gender questions you always wanted to ask in our new podcast, They and Us. Listen now.
Well, over a decade ago, a Canadian man made international headlines by taking a paperclip and trading it into a house through a series of big trades.
Now, that feat has once again been replicated, this time with a nautical twist, don't you know? And as the CBC's Travis Kingdon explains, the final prize still up for grabs.
Josh Lindsay always liked the story of a man who traded from a paperclip to a house. So he put a fish hook online to try his own hand at it. 13 trades later, which included paintings, jewelry, and a marijuana plant, he ended up with a sailboat. He says he stopped there because that was something he really wanted, but now he's decided to give it away.
And then I was having too much fun, and I said, okay, let's turn this into something, and because I seem to have engaged a lot of people around these trades. People were commenting online like, this is so exciting, I can't wait to see what happens next, and a lot of people wanted to participate, but they didn't have something to give, they didn't have something to trade. So I figured maybe I'll turn this into a giveaway type of thing.
What Lindsay came up with was a real-life treasure hunt, where groups search for clues around the campground, trying to find, you guessed it, a golden fish hook. And everyone who does find the hook is entered into a draw for the sailboat.
I thought this was a whole lot more fun, to just do something a little different. And I feel like people right now, 2020 is like this crazy mixed mash of feelings. I feel like we could use a lot of fun right now, so.
Whoever wins the sailboat will also get a reminder of where all of this started. The winning team will take home the golden fish hook. Now, the owner here at Ben's Lake says he hopes this becomes an annual tradition so that he can always remember the time he traded all the way up to a sailboat from just a fish hook. Travis Kingdon, CBC News, Belfast.
That's a great idea. How much fun is that?
That's very cool.
Have you made any good trades ever? Any treasure hunt memories?
You're darn right I did.
Oh,
Yarmer Yager rookie card, 1990, upper deck. I don't know what I traded away for it, but the important thing was I got that. That's it.
Oh, so that's what you got in return?
For the trade of another
that's
card,
nice.
and I don't remember what his name was. It's
okay.
I assumed it was fair.
I hope it was worth something. It's worth something now, is it?
I'll look it up later. This next story takes us from land and sea to air, kind of. Flying has become even more of an ordeal during this global pandemic.
There are fewer flights, mandatory masks, and many restrictions. But for those pining for the journey, an airport in Taiwan came up with a way to simulate the experience. At the downtown airport in the capital, 60 people chosen at random from about 7,000 applicants were allowed to go on a pretend vacation. They were handed mock itineraries at check-in, scrutinized by passport control services and security, and then allowed to board.
The flight was going nowhere, apparently. A promotional opportunity to show off renovations at the airport. More fake flights will be held in the coming week.
I guess if you want to go on an adventure that badly.
But do you get peanuts? Do you get like pilot's wingtips, swizzle stick? Like, do they sell drinks?
No, but you get pretend
experience.
scrutiny from the passport control people.
And maybe somebody's chair will magically come down and recline when you don't want it to.
Maybe. But look how excited that little kid was.
It was.
It seems fun.
It is.
Kind of.
You can always find our news program online at cbc.ca/BC. I'll be back at 11 after the National.
Good night.